Hi again, everybody. This is Pat Gallagher, and once again, I'm going to be covering the subject of whether or not the Earth is flat or spherical. In a previous video, I talked about how Christians have been caught up in this flat Earth ideology, and how a flat Earth presents to us a stage, a very big stage in the center of the universe, where the sun, moon, and the stars revolve around us, and therefore God can perform His purposes, and we being the center of the universe are become very significant in His plan. Whereas a global Earth, which is just a speck of dust flying around a sun that is one of trillions and trillions of stars in a vast universe, doesn't give us that type of significance. I also covered the scriptures, metaphor of Isaiah, where it speaks about the circle of the earth and how that was taken to be interpreted as a flat disk. Or in fact, if you also could take it to the other extreme, where a circle could also mean a sphere. Now, flat doesn't appear in the Bible as being flat, as we do nowadays, and neither is there a word for sphere. And the reason being is because the Bible is not a scientific textbook. I mean, you don't have geometric terms in there like distances and triangles and arcs and so on and so forth, nor do you have biological terms or physics terms or whatever type of terms that you need for science. Also covered other scriptures like Earth and being firm in its orbit and not being shaken in its orbit, as the Psalms are interpreted. I didn't cover the sense of the Earth firmament, that is the sky. And flat earthers tend to believe that the sky is actually a dome. But if you take a look at that, you don't get that sense where God is actually saying that the earth is flat. Because in reality, no matter where you're standing on the earth, whether it be here or Australia, you are underneath the sky. And that applies not only to a flat earth, but also to a spherical earth. So you really can't make a case for a flat earth there. But remember that the Bible does not negate science. The Bible is a book of creation, of God's majesty and His order. Things are very ordered, and things have purpose, and gravity has purpose, although it's not defined. But God does not go against science either. And if we apply the geometry and say the geometry of the sun. Now, with a flat earth model, we should be able to calculate the distance of the sun by using simple geometry, and here are the givens. The sun is directly over the Tropic of Cancer at the summer solstice. This is observed. And the sun will be, therefore, 90 degrees to the plane of the flat earth. And then the angle of the sun is observed at 23.5 degrees above the horizon at the solstice. And that the distance from the North Pole to the Tropic of Cancer is 4,588 miles. So we would diagram it this way, using this right triangle. And this will require the one side, two angle formula to solve this triangle's unknowns. And we plug in those numbers and we come up with this solution. And here we find that the sun is 1,994 miles above the earth at the Tropic of Cancer, but is 5,002 miles away from the North Pole. This means that the sun should appear to be 2.5 times larger at the Tropic of Cancer than at the North Pole. And do we observe this? Flat Earth would say, no, we can't observe this because the sun is too bright and there's too much glare. Actually, if you use a pair of welder's glasses, you could observe this. And I will say that you don't see this. But let's take our example and let's make it in other places. Let's take the city of Cleveland as another example. We know that the city of Cleveland is 2,867 miles from the equator and is located at 41 degrees above the equator. Transferring those numbers to the Tropic of Cancer is 1,249 miles from the Tropic of Cancer and is 17.5 degrees above the Tropic of Cancer. So plugging in those numbers, we get these numbers. Therefore, the sun, according to our observations at Cleveland, is 3,000 961 miles above the Tropic of Cancer. And it also should be observed at 72.5 degrees. More on this later. Now, Tampa is located 312 miles away and 4 degrees above the Tropic of Cancer. Again, plugging in those numbers. The sun in Tampa is 4,472 miles away, but 4,461 miles above the Tropic of Cancer. And it should be observed at 86 degrees above the horizon at Tampa at noon on the solstice. Now we have a problem. Notice the differences in the heights of where the sun is above the Tropic of Cancer. They're different. But why aren't they the same? Well, maybe we should use the height of the sun as a constant. Okay, let's try this out. Let's use the North Pole's observations at 1,994 miles. Therefore, plugging in these numbers at Cleveland, we should observe the sun at 57.9 degrees. And the sun would be 2,352.8 miles away from the city of Cleveland. Tampa, it should be observed at 81.1 degrees. And it's 2,018 miles away from the sun. What are the actual numbers of the observations? Cleveland is actually observed at 60 degrees. The flat earth says it should be 57 degrees. Okay, it's not too far off. We can get away with that. However, at Tampa, it says it should be observed at 73 degrees when the flat earth model says it should be 81.1. That's not kosher. So maybe, again, our math is wrong. So let's plug in the actual observations, the degrees of observation. Cleveland 60 degrees, Tampa 73 degrees, and again the North Pole at 23.5. Again, our numbers don't match up. Height of the sun is different. And the reason being is because the math doesn't work at distances because they're actually arcs rather than straight lines. This kind of proves that the fact that the world is not flat, but spherical. Just for the argument, let's just take the actual tangents from the North Pole directly on a straight line to the Tropic of Cancer, as well as Cleveland and Tampa. And we figure it out this way. The North Pole would actually be 4,340 miles in distance in a direct line from the North Pole to the Tropic of Cancer. Whereas Cleveland would be 1,224 miles and Tampa 280.4 miles. So let's plug in those numbers. Again, you don't have numbers that match up. Why doesn't this work? It works just fine on a spherical Earth with a huge sun that's millions and millions of miles away. Again, we have a proof for a spherical Earth. Now, let's just make matters worse. Let's go to Australia. Technically, this diagram here would show an actual sunrise for someone standing in Australia. But because the flat Earth model uses a spotlight version, I'll talk about that when we talk about the moon in our next video, you should have on the day of the summer solstice, which is December 20th, technically the sun should be observed from Australia even when it is here. And I'll show you why. And it should even be observed from the farthest distance directly over the North Pole from South America. I'll cover that a little bit later as well. But doing the math, Evan, the sun is 1,994 miles above the Earth. The distance from the Tropic of Capricorn across the North Pole to the opposite side is 15,672 miles. But because I'm using a tangent from the Arctic Circle, because the Arctic Circle at the winter solstice is darkened, we must use this as the line for the terminator of shadow and light. The North Pole is darkened as down to the Arctic Circle. So the angle here will be measured from here, and the distance from these 2 points is 11,433 miles. Again, the angle of the sun being 90 degrees above the Earth, above the Tropic of Capricorn. So plugging in the numbers here. Here the sun will be 90.8 degrees above the horizon and being 11,605 miles away. And it should be visible from Australia because its size would only be 5.8 times smaller than it would eventually be at noontime. And here's the diagram of that. Now let's put this in an actual photograph. This photograph shows the sun about an hour before sunset. This means that it's 15 degrees above the horizon before sunset. Now the circle marks 9.8 degrees. And this would mean the size of the sun would be around this size. Now I also added in the stars of Orion as a point of reference for the brightness of the sun here. And this means that at least the sun should be visible if you take a long exposure photograph, which many photographers do to get what's known as star trails. And more on that when I talk about star trails in the next video. But let's make some other compelling observations. Another thing to consider, how fast does the sun need to travel at the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn in order to return to the same starting longitude in 24 hours? Notice that the Tropic of Cancer is a much smaller circle than the Tropic of Capricorn. And because of this, the sun must travel at a higher speed in order to finish a 24-hour day at the Tropic of Capricorn. Let's do the math. The circumference of the Tropic of Cancer is 22,847 miles. The circumference of the Tropic of Capricorn is a whopping 49,204 miles. So the difference the sun must travel is 26,357 miles at the Tropic of Capricorn. Now let's figure out the miles per hour. Divide by 24 and you have the sun traveling at the Tropic of Cancer at a whopping 951 miles per hour. At the Tropic of Capricorn, it is speeded up to 2,050 miles per hour. That means that the sun is traveling at 1,099 miles faster on December 20th than on June 20th. And that it must return to that 951 mile per hour speed a half a year later. Now, considering that the speed of sound is 767 miles per hour, we see that the sun is traveling at the Tropic of Cancer at 951 miles per hour. That is over Mach 1. The sun is actually traveling at nearly Mach 3 at the Tropic of Capricorn. So why ain't the sun and the moon shattering windows and our eardrums as they pass overhead? Now that's just the math for the sun. Stay tuned for the next video where I talk about the moon and star trails and some other observations. So until then, the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Walk with the King in Jesus' name.